Good evening, fellow heretics. Welcome back to a new episode of Nerds and Heresy. We got a bit of a different one tonight. Recently was introduced to a former megachurch pastor who just recently came out as an atheist. And I met him on a stream on Skeptic Haven to celebrate Apostasy's birthday. And he heard a brief synopsis of his story, and I was like, dude, please let me interview on this. And he was like, yeah, for sure. So he was totally chill about it. And so why am I still talking? Let's bring him on. Intro. I didn't click the right button. Hold on. Nothing but professionalism. Y'all know how this works. Here we go.
On to your butts.
We strive for excellency here on Nerds and Heresy, and we accept nothing less. How you doing, Darante?
I am doing amazing, man. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, yeah, where do you have such a long story that goes in so many different directions, and I haven't even listened to a lot of it. Where should we start with this? Do you want to start from the beginning? How did you become a Christian? Because you were
sure.
Yeah, there we go. Just give us a synopsis of your background, then we'll get into the weeds.
All right. Yep. Man, I was born in the 80s to a mother who was impacted by the crack epidemic, father who wasn't around, family that was incredibly dysfunctional, but what I describe as culturally Christian, which mean we went to church on the holidays every now and then. And whenever the church was cooking, we were there. We were going to be there for the food because churches like to feed people. But other than that, we didn't have any real religious attachments. Some of the older people in the family were on boards at the Baptist church and stuff, but it wasn't like the church board. It was like the mother's board or something where all the old ladies get together to talk about other folk. But it was something I was really just never interested in. Did not catch my eye at all. I did read the Bible as a child, and I was convinced as a child that it was just mythology, and that the old folks read it kind of in the same way they read Shakespeare. It was just something nice, something encouraging. And then I ended up going to a Pentecostal church and watched my mother get demons cast out of her, and I was for sure that hey, this is going to make her a better person as a mother. And now I have some evidence that maybe this God of the Bible has some truth to it, because this is an active version of God. And in the churches we went to during the holidays, God wasn't very active. Just people sang songs, and then somebody got up and gave a very boring speech. But in these Pentecostal churches, people were running around, speaking in tongues and pushing each other down and stuff. And then, of course, casting out devils and people spitting up, throwing up, and all that type of. And for whatever reason, that sold me. I was like, yep, there's a real God. Oh, man. So a few weeks after that experience, I actually got saved. It makes it was like, this is evidence, this is evidence that God is real.
Yeah. And you look back on it now and you're like, wow, that was fucking crazy. But at the time, you were like, it was intoxicating at the time, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was like being at a magic show. Imagine being at a magic show as a kid and you see, somebody wave their hands and people fall down. It's like, I want that superpower. But at this magic show, it's not a big secret. They're telling you anybody can have this superpower if you just serve Jesus. And so then I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to serve Jesus, and I'm sure I didn't think of it as superpowers back then, but that's definitely how I was looking at it. And it became really critical for me because my mom her deliverance didn't necessarily take. And so just a few weeks later, she was the same person again, doing the same things again, going backwards. But by this time, I was kind of convinced that, maybe the reason that's happening because I didn't agree to serve God when she was first delivered. And so maybe if I serve God and give God my
It was
life,
your
he'll
fault,
actually save my mother. Yeah, yeah. Oh man, isn't it great how that happens?
right?
Oh,
Real quick
yep.
before we go any further, because I'm really bad at
Yes.
this. I want to say hi to some of the people in the chat who are joining.
Oh, yes.
Apostasy's in here. Hi. Cat,
Yay.
as
The cat.
always. Metal Theologian. Where's it? Awoken One. What's up, man? Jimothy. Riley. Hello. Darante. How you doing, Darante? Good.
That is me, isn't it?
Cool. All right. Yeah. So I'm gonna make sure I did that. I'm trying to get better at saying hi to you guys who are watching the show. But yeah. All right. So moving forward. By the
Yeah.
way, y'all, if y'all have any questions for Durante at any point during the stream, feel free to send them. Doesn't have to be a super chat. But yeah, y'all know the drill. Y'all been here before. Y'all know what's up. All right. So yeah, where were we?
So I got saved. And got saved to save my mom, basically, was where I kind of left off.
Yeah. And
And
you started blaming yourself kind of for her
yeah, it was
conversion not really taking.
right. It was almost kind of like you got to rationalize it some way because surely this all powerful God didn't mess up, So he delivered her, but because I didn't fulfill my obligation to walk down the altar the same night he delivered her, then it didn't really take that way because that was the other part of the deal. And so, which my whole walk with God ended up being a lot of maybes, like, well, maybe I'm supposed to do this or maybe I'm supposed to do that. So when that happened, I did a few weeks later get saved, and then the night I got saved, my mom sent me on an errand when I got home. By this time, she had stopped going to the church, and she sent me to buy her some alcohol, from a little bootlegger spot. And at this time, I'm about 10 or 11. And I was on my way there, and then it kind of felt like I shouldn't do this. Maybe this is bad. And there was a lady who went to the church that lived in the same apartment complex. So I went and asked her, I said, hey, kind of feel like I shouldn't do this. And she said, that's the voice of God. That's the Holy Spirit speaking to you. And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm not going to disobey God. So I'm going to go home and tell my mom, hey, mom, I
It had
can't do
nothing
this.
to do with your concern for your mother's well-being.
Nothing.
Nothing to do with that at all.
No. Your conscience is God. That's it.
Yep.
So, which that one was a very small church, Cat. It was a very, 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 the church I got saved in, very small. They're still small to this day. I'm surprised they're still kicking. Um, but the next morning, she kicked me out. The next morning, she said, hey, you will either serve me or you will serve the church. And I said, well, I'll serve the church because I think, that's the answer I'm supposed to give. And I'm almost thinking that because I'm giving the right answer, like maybe this is God tempting me. This is God testing me, trying to see if, yes. Well, I either passed it or failed it. I don't know which one, but she kicked me out. So I don't know which one, how God chalked that one up.
Oof, that's crazy.
And that was my entrance. That was actually my entrance into radical Pentecostalism, though. Because for whatever reason, that experience reaffirmed for me that I was truly called by God, because it was like nobody else would go through something like this. Nobody else would get saved and then the very next day get kicked out because they got saved. This must mean that the devil really doesn't want me to do this. And that's why the devil is fighting so hard. And I must really be called. And so I don't know why, but that really kind of helped me settle in, hook, line, and sinker.
No, that may sound like batshit crazy to most people. That makes perfect sense to me. I totally understand. that line of logic coming from
Yep.
that kind of similar teaching. Like, oh yeah, that's
yes.
totally normal. Yeah, that's what you do in that
Totally
situation.
normal.
Totally, yeah.
Oh man. So after that, I continued to hunger and thirst after God, believing that, as long as I hungered and thirsted, He'd fill me up. And I kind of felt like I was getting the signs of it, because the more I got engaged, the more people would engage with me. Now, at that time, I couldn't see, well, it's because, Durante, you're kind of articulate, you have a nice voice, you're kind of charismatic outside of the spiritual definition. And so people kind of like hearing from you. But at that time, it was just, no, you're anointed. People are listening to you because the Spirit of God is drawing them to you, and you're special. And so, 12 years old, I'm in my schools witnessing to people, praying for people, and getting them filled with the Holy Ghost with the evidence of speaking in tongues. Uh, by the time I'm in high school, I am literally in the in-school suspension rooms. I'm going to in-school suspension on purpose so I can prophesy and pray to people that are in school suspension. Because my rationale was, this is where Jesus would be. So I'd literally go to school and hide my ID badge so I can get in school suspension to pray for people.
I mean, that makes sense. Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Dude, that's
Oh yeah.
I never went that
Oh
far.
man, I wasted a lot of time. Oh yeah, I was over the deep end. By the time I was in ninth grade, people were already calling me apostle and prophet. And so I was definitely kind of feeling myself, but because I came from Pentecostal holiness, I had this immense sense of I call it false humility now. But I really felt like I was being really, really humble. And so, like, I was the type of guy who would pray 3 to 4 hours a day, because I felt like you needed to tithe your day to the Lord. God is giving you 24 hours a day. Why wouldn't you give him at least 2.4 of that back? And so I'd spend, like, hours just, in my room on the floor, first, kind of crying out in faith. Oh God, you're so amazing. You're so wonderful, so holy, so beautiful. I honor you, and all that good stuff. And then somewhere in the middle, it becomes a rage fest of, why the fuck aren't you speaking to me? Sorry. Why aren't you speaking to me? And then by the end, it's just like, okay, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done.
That is absolutely really
rough times.
Yeah, I did a lot of the same stuff, like the personal worship in your own bedroom, like listening to whatever music, Hillsong probably.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh man.
You're in your room, like crying, like, God, I want to know you more.
Yes.
And now you're just like, wow, I could have been playing video games. That would have been a better use of my time.
I could have been getting in on the technological revolution. I could have been inventing Facebook.
Yeah, right?
Oh man.
All right, so you're in.
Ooh, great question.
What's that?
I just saw a question from D, and I did want to answer that. My mother is still alive. And no, we do not have a great relationship at all. She's was actually very upset when I became an atheist. The irony, right? But that is something. Well, let me say it this way: there's been no reconciliation between her and I, but I'm completely reconciled. I realized a long time ago that my mother, and I love her, she just wasn't a mature person. She was never a person who gave herself the responsibility to grow up and deal with the world appropriately. And unfortunately, the way we dealt with religion gave her a lot of excuses. And so it was never, I actually have to work on being a better person. It just became, I was sick back then, and it doesn't count because my sins are forgiven and that have been cast into the sea of forgetfulness. And so, and so we never got a healthy relationship. I pretended and stayed very close with my mother as long as I could, until it just got to the place where it was just absolutely draining. And so finally, and I had, unfortunately, and I know this may sound cold to some people, but I had to do this with my mother and my father. And it was like, hey, listen, you never signed up to be parents. You were two kids who got pregnant and lived in a world where you didn't have a lot of options. And since then, you haven't actually tried to be parents. And I lived a major part of my life like I had a hole because of that. But a great deal of my atheism experience was getting a great deal of a sense of self-worth, where like, no, I'm not broken because my parents didn't fulfill some type of social contract. I am still every bit of a human as anybody else, and I am capable in any other capacity. So the thing became for me, I don't have any holes in my life that need to be filled. And so if you're not going to be this role functionally, I don't need this role ornamentally. And so if me being this different bothers you that much, let's just kiss and say goodbye. I don't have those superstitious attachments where just because we were born in the same bloodline that we have to tolerate each other to oblivion. And so it's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
but it doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And that was different.
Yeah. I get that. We're talking about Sage. I have 4 kids, and like, it doesn't matter what any of them do. I'm gonna love them,
Right.
because I can't help it. Sometimes I
Yes.
wish I loved them less than I do, but I can't help it. I love the shit out of all of them. It's like, I don't care what you do. Oh, you want to be trans? I don't give a shit.
Come
I
right.
support you. I
Yeah.
love you. Do what you.
Yes.
Oh, you murdered somebody on the playground? I'll help you bury the body. You know, I love you. You know,
Right. Let's go. Yeah. You're mine.
so
You're
I
mine.
hear these types of stories when, like, parents who just completely disown their children based on their
Oh
religion.
yeah.
Like, how do you do that? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
and one of the hard things that I had to realize with my family, and my family is extremely dysfunctional. That's a whole other conversation in itself. But one thing that I had to realize is that I don't think it would have ever been anything. It was when I got saved, it was a problem for my family. When I decided I was going to pastor, it was a problem for my family. When I decided I wanted to go to Bible college, it was a problem. When I decided I wanted to get married, it was a problem. When I decided I wanted to get divorced, it was a problem. When I decided I wanted to step away from pastoring because I had doubts, it was a problem. So I finally realized that these people were really just not mature enough to know what the hell they wanted anyway. And it was making me, like, actually sick trying to keep up with these people who didn't know what the hell they wanted. And that's how dangerous superstition had become to them. It wasn't even just the religion, just the fact that I was different and doing anything different than they were doing at any time. So I wanted to feel bad and say, maybe this is just because I'm an atheist. And then finally I was like, no, it's just because I'm not stuck. I'm around people who are stuck and they enjoy being stuck, and they're mad at me for not being stuck. I got out of the lion's den instead of trying to wait to see what God was going to do with the lions. I said, I'll pass on this one.
I like that. Good analogy there.
Yeah.
All right. So what was high school for you like then? So
Man.
Middle school years, pretty much, right?
Yep.
So how did
High school was my glory years. They were my glory years as a Christian. Yeah. I guess because I went to 4 different high schools. So each one I was able to kind of reinvent myself. Again, very dysfunctional family, so it moved around a lot. But each one I led a campus ministry or started a campus ministry. And the last one, which I was at for 2 years, I actually led a revival on campus. Initiated a revival that started from doing that in school suspension stuff, where one of the teachers was also a member of one of the churches in the area and was so impressed by my ability to prophesy. And so there was a funny story. There was a school rally, and all the kids who were in detention couldn't go to the school rally. And I was doing a prayer meeting at the same time as the school rally. So I convinced the detention teacher to ask if any of the students from detention would come to the prayer rally. And they did. And I had a band in there. You know what I'm saying? We got in a prayer circle. I stood in the middle of the circle. and let the band play. And I can sing a little bit, so I sung and began to sing prophetically. And just to kind of, thinking back on it now with clear eyes, I'm very closely watching the room, watching how people are responding to the music, watching how they're responding to the kind of atmosphere that we're creating. And then those who are showing a high sensitivity, I'm going over to them and engaging them. But it was such a moment. It was a defining moment for me at that time, because all of these kids, most of which who didn't identify as Christians, started crying and falling over. And so I'm like, yes, this is it. Revival has come. And it did, for what we thought, like it did. It caught the attention of the local Assemblies of God church, who then offered for us to bring the revival to their church for 3 nights. And man, was that not a weird situation? It was called Feed the Fire. 3 teenage preachers. All of us were like 16 and 17 at this time. We're all tongue talkers. We all believe in laying hands on people. And this was the type of revival where people were taking off their cast. This is also the type of revival where you go over and you touch somebody and they fall out on the floor laughing. There may have been some people barking like a dog at some point. It was bananas, man.
And this happens.
Yes,
this is not a joke.
And to give you some caveat, right? Oh my goodness, there was an incident, and I think I shared this on the Stacey's Mom podcast. There was an incident that night that I remember kind of messing with my dissonance a little bit. It messed with my cognitive dissonance because I was a tongue talker for a very long time. I could talk in tongues like the best of them, and I had no problems with it. But I kind of believed that it was like holy gibberish. It's like holy baby talk. You can't speak in God's language. Nobody can really understand it. You're doing the best you can. But at this particular revival, several of the people started, for what I say, pretending to have full conversations in tongues. And then I just remember one of the other preachers coming over to me and trying to like have a conversation with me in tongues. And I remember on the inside being totally freaked out because I'm like, I don't know what he's saying. And I don't think I'm supposed to know what he's saying, but he obviously thinks that I'm supposed to know what he's saying. And so I just spoke in tongues back, but I knew good and well that I don't know what's happening here. And that was a moment of major cognitive dissonance for me. I don't know how I stayed in after that because I'm like, okay, now we're obviously pretending at this moment. This is like Power Rangers gone too far. This is like play gone too far.
Wow. I have a similar my first experience speaking in tongues is kind of similar, but not nearly that extreme. It was just, you have a service that's dedicated to filling people with the Holy Spirit. Like that's the whole purpose.
Yes, sir.
So they order the service, they pick the right kinds of songs that have Holy Spirit centered themes in them, and and at the end they have all the elders who speak in tongues come up and like, hey, if you have the gift of speaking in tongues, the infilling of the Holy Spirit, come up to the altar and these men of God will pray with you. So you do it.
Yeah.
And because you're young and you're dumb and you're ambitious, and so you go up there and you have these elders go around you and they'll lay hands on you, put them on your head, your whatever, and they'll speak in tongues over you, and then they'll be like, the Holy Spirit has given you the gift right now, brother. Speak in tongues right now. Just do it. Just go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do it. You're good. You're good. You're fine. just do it. Not quite like that, but but they're like, it's go on, brother. And so you're surrounded by these people who you respect as spiritual elders, superiors, and they're not wrong. They can't be wrong. So you must be wrong. You must not be believing it enough. So maybe you should just go ahead and start speaking in tongues. So you do. And that's what happened with me. And when it was all said and done, I felt weird afterwards. I was like, that I don't know why I did that. I don't like that I did that. It didn't make sense to me. I still spoke in tongues for a while after that because I was afraid, I was forsaking the Holy Spirit or whatever by not speaking in tongues
Oh
now,
yes. Oh
But eventually I
yes.
just
Oh,
stopped, you know.
you know what? Just hearing you say that makes me realize how much I was afraid of doing anything that would blaspheme the Holy Spirit. Because I couldn't define what that was, and so that now makes a lot of sense as to why things I'm just jumping into. Because it's in the old holiness church, they said don't quench the Spirit, don't grieve the Spirit, and I'm like, dang, that sounds too close to blaspheming, and maybe if I do that, that'll be the unforgivable sin, and I'll be done messing myself up forever. Oh man, like yeah, and I that's
Yeah.
something I haven't actually thought about in years.
You're walking on eggshells constantly. Like,
Yes.
like is this bad? Is this should I be you're never sure of what you're doing, and it makes life very difficult and very hard to enjoy.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. I think, man, I was definitely mentally unhealthy throughout the majority of my period in ministry. I don't remember. I remember a lot of happy moments. I don't remember a lot of good days. You know, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I have a lot of fond memories from my time in church. Like I had friends, and we'd go when we're not in church. So, like we'd become
Yeah.
develop friendships in church, and then we'll go like, "Hey, you want to come over my house and play Rock Band for 4 hours?" Yeah, those were great, good memories there.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that happened in church, I could do without. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what happened after high school? What'd you do
High
as
school was a very weird transition for me, right? So the church that I was a member of in high school was a very large church. This was a church that people like Jesse Duplantis had come and preached at, Benny Hinn, Rod Parsley, and it was definitely
Benny
that type of
Hinn?
church.
Wow.
Old Benny.
That's a name right there, Benny Hinn, you guys. That's a name.
That is a name for
You
you.
know, you know.
I used to get up in the morning and watch Benny Hinn before going to school. Like that's how deep in it I was in it, and I'd be praying in tongues while watching it, praying to take that
I
healing
never knew
anointing
how
into
to
my
feel about him.
schools. Oh man,
Yeah.
such a crook, man, such a crook. That's just the best way to call that one.
It's just like we were saying earlier, like I wasn't okay with hearing some of the things he said and seeing some things he did, but I was afraid of feeling that way about him because maybe I'm not
Yep.
honoring God by feeling that way about this man of God.
Oh
It's a
yes.
whole thing.
Oh man.
Anyway,
Well, my the pastor that I was under at the time, he was preaching a series that was basically a revival series. So he was laying hands on people during the series, and I thought it was incredible. I thought it was the best thing ever. As a matter of fact, I had just got offered a job that at the Assemblies of God church that I did the revival for to come be their worship pastor, which I was blown away because I was like 17 around the time. And I was like, oh, this would be so awesome. So I can do this. But then I felt like God said, don't do that. No, you need to serve this man of God here. And so that same week, I went to Pastor David and I said, God told me to stay by your side. He died like 2 weeks later. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to feel about that.
didn't mean to laugh there.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Well, it gets worse.
I wasn't ready
It
for
gets
that. I
worse.
wasn't ready for that.
Yeah. Like I had to check my prophetic hearing, I guess. But
Oh man,
not
wow.
only did he died in the middle of teaching this series about how we're supposed to be doing greater works than Jesus, and we're supposed to be healing the sick, raising the dead, casting out devils, and we were a church that believed God raised the dead. And so, in my naivety, I was expecting that these associate pastors who had been shouting and standing up every Sunday saying, yes, I believe it, and affirming this belief in God being able to raise the dead, in my naivety, I was waiting for them to gather around that man's deathbed and raise him up. To my
Yeah.
dismay, nobody tried. It wasn't
Yeah,
a thing. It was like, No, that doesn't happen. Who's next? Who's going to be the pastor now? And that became the conversation. It became about 3 months of infighting of who was going to get to sit in the big seat, especially since his insurance policy gave 5 million to the church and 5 million to his wife. And so that was like the conversation immediately. I was like, no, but
wow.
we're supposed to be raising them from the dead. Oh yeah, a lot of megachurch pastors use the same insurance guy. I actually know his name. I'm hesitant to say it, but he creates these just fascinating insurance policies. Man, they're amazing. They're amazing. But yeah, so that church got paid off completely.
It's Dave Ramsey.
No, but Dave did come. The guy's name is Solomon Hicks. And if you Google his name, like he does TD Jakes policy, he does Paula White's policy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like it's kind of like a cult. Huh?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that name actually.
Yeah, well, see, he's not a preacher or anything. He's literally just an insurance guy, and he shows up at a few of the leadership conferences. Yep. Just to make sure these pastors are covered. But yeah, man, I was blown away that nobody raised him from the dead. Nobody even tried. And so I was like, so do we not really believe this? Are the rest of us pretending to believe this? Well, poor little naive me thinks this is really something that can happen, and this is something that God actually does. That was actually heart-wrenching to go through. It's funny as hell looking back at it now, but back then I was devastated. I had just got off of work that morning. Worked night shift. Go ahead.
Are you familiar at all with the? I'm sure you are. Are you familiar at all with Smith Wigglesworth?
The Apostle of Faith, absolutely. I read everything I could get my hands on about Smith.
Oh yeah. Oh, this guy. This guy was the standard, y'all.
Yes.
There's all the craziest stories about him you can imagine. So there's stories of like he would pick up like a dead child's body and like drop kick it into the wall, and it would come back to life. I'm not kidding, right?
Yes.
I'm not making this up.
Yes.
Right? We didn't.
That's Smith. Stacy just put it in there. Yep. He was the baby thrower.
Yeah. This was a thing that there are these stories that he would just pick up like dead babies and throw them, and they would come back to life. Lots of these stories.
I believe
everybody heard these, and we believe it. So we're like, why aren't we doing that? If we really believe that was legit, like, should I pick up this dead body and throw it? Or, and of course, none of that happens now, even though there's video cameras everywhere. It would just take one video of like that happening to convince people, but
just one.
All you hear is stories back then.
Yep. And then I even realized that like the modern day, like even the things that we do say are healings were things that were easily explainable and things that nobody actually tried to explain. Like I can remember one time laying hands on somebody. I'm doing things that I've seen other preachers do, right? And so somebody said, I've been having back pain, and come on, God is about to heal you. And so I tell them to lift up their hands, and when they lift up their hands, I hit their hands, and I just keep hitting their hands. And as I'm hitting their hands, I'm saying, how does your back feel now? How does your back feel now? Now, at that time, I'm just as naive as everybody else participating. It's like monkey see, monkey do. I'm doing what I've seen other preachers do. And the person is telling me, I don't feel the back pain anymore. And I'm like, look at there, God is giving you your healing. But now, like, I think back easily, like, oh, this is like literally misdirection. All you did was took their mind off of the pain in their back, moved their mind to the impulses of you hitting their hands. And so they're literally just thinking about the sensation they're feeling in their hands. So they're no longer thinking about the pain in their back. So to them, they're actually thinking, oh no, my back must be healed because I'm not thinking about that pain anymore. And I was like, wow, this is a really sneaky trick that most of the people who are participating in it don't even know they're doing. Because I didn't know at the time that's what I was doing. but I knew for sure that many of these people whose backs were healed were in another prayer line just a few weeks or a few months later for the same back issue.
Oh, I hadn't heard of that one. That's new to me, actually.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
the
no,
hitting
I
hands.
have plenty of those.
That's a
Yes,
new one.
or just anything you can do. Anytime someone has a physical ailment that's measured by where you can say, what is your pain level from 1 to 10. All you have to do is redirect where they're thinking about, where they're thinking about, and just do that with physical impact. So whether you're hitting their hands, hitting their chest, running them around the building, you do any of those things, is going to misdirect their
Oh yeah,
thinking, and they're no longer going to be able to
familiar with
concentrate
the
on the
running.
pain.
Yep.
Oh yes. The
And
one with the
in
people in
Pentecostal church,
the.
don't be surprised if people start sprinting around the pews. That'll
Oh, we
happen.
love it.
Oh man.
Yes, just the craziest stuff. The craziest stuff. Boy.
All right. So, after high school, did
Yeah.
you go to college at all? Because I'm not actually. Yeah, you did, right?
Okay. Well, I did eventually. I wanted to go to World Harvest Bible College, which was Rod Parsley's college in Ohio, because Rod was the spiritual son of Lester Sumrall, and Lester Sumrall was another one of those names like Smith Wigglesworth and John G. Lake. And so I was like, yeah, I want to go to the School of the Spirit so I can get that mantle, on me. But my dad, who I was living with his mother at the time, my grandmother, he said he wouldn't pay for college if I go to Bible school. Well, it just turns out he wasn't going to pay for college if I went anywhere. So it was just an excuse, and I didn't actually have an interest in any college outside of Bible school at the time, because I really wanted to serve the Lord, and all the other colleges just looked like a bunch of drinking and sex, and I was just like, oh, those heathens. I don't want to be surrounded by that. My anointing might get contaminated, and so I spent the next 4 years of my life after high school struggling and preaching. And all of those glory days of preaching started to fade a little bit. I think, oh man, this is a funny money based story, but I preached at one church, and it was my first time, because out of all my times preaching as a kid, all of the churches I had preached in were either white churches or mixed churches. I never actually preached in a black church since I had gotten saved. And so as an adult, I got a preaching invitation, and I went and preached, and it was definitely a weird Pentecostal church. Decent service, whatever. But I remember that night, it was the most interesting thing I had ever experienced. Well, I can't even say that, but it was an interesting thing. They paid me in a sock. It was a sock filled with pennies, nickels, and dimes. There may have been 2 quarters in the whole thing. It was literally enough to get a Little Caesars pizza. It's a true story.
What?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Okay, I have.
I had never seen anything like that before. Yeah.
Okay.
It didn't even look like a clean sock at that. Like it was concerning.
That doesn't even make sense. There's no biblical references to socks. Where did that even come from? Okay. That's another.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was rough.
I've heard of it all.
Oh man.
That's
Oh, and I saw Stacy asked about the Todd Bentley character. I was all about that Todd Bentley revival. It was in Florida, which was not too far away from where I was, and it was absolutely foolishness. There were people laughing and clawing like dogs and stuff on the stage, rolling all over the floor, and miracles were allegedly happening. And of course, people were traveling from all over the world trying to get some. I wish I could remember what that revival was named, because they all have names. There was Brownsville, there was the Ontario Blessing. It's just like there's always a name. Yes. Oh yes, I forgot about Azusa. Yes.
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Oh man, that actually brought tears to my eyes. It was so funny just thinking about it. Yikes. Yikes. The things we used to do. But so by this time I am in my journey as an adult looking to become more a part of more practical ministries at this time. So they're still charismatic, they still speak in tongues, but the messages are no longer about revival and no longer about greater works and stuff like that. The messages at this moment is just about it's still you're anointed and God is going to do great things with you, but it's more prosperity based, even some humanist based. God is going to use you to help people and things of that nature. But it was the same superstition, and then I began to allow myself to see parts of church that I hadn't saw that I wasn't willing to pay attention to before. Like there were certain things I saw, and I was just like, "Oh no, just the small churches do that because they don't know any better, or their preachers aren't really anointed." And so I thought again that naivety. I thought in these bigger churches that there would be a more assuredness of God, right? So that God would surely be more active in these bigger churches and people would be closer to God and they would behave more like we think, God-like people are supposed to behave. And I didn't get a lot of that. So I remember being a part of this church, which is another kind of defining point in my life. This is a point where I'm growing in popularity, but not necessarily understanding what any of it means. But the pastor, he knew he didn't like it. And so I became a target and I couldn't understand why. Everything I did became wrong, and it got to certain points where it was nearly violent. And I thought those things were normal. And I remember I was working at Office Depot with one of my friends, and he went to one of the Vineyard churches. And I was just explaining to him how some things were going at the church, and just like, you remember Vineyard? Yes.
Yeah, I do. I forgot all about them. Wow.
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, yes. They're a different breed. And as I was telling him what we were doing at the church, he was just like, brother, that sounds like abuse. And I was like, no, it's not abuse. It's I said spiritual obedience, or it was something I said like that. And he was like, no. Mm-hmm. And then I remember thinking in that moment, like, holy crap, there's a lot of stuff that I've allowed myself to kind of deal with that isn't normal. So for instance, the pastor, and by this time I'm 18, the pastor at one point didn't like a prayer I prayed. And so he called a staff meeting. And in the staff meeting, we're in the room and he looks at me and he says, if we were in the streets, I'd kick you in your chest. And I was just like, oh, okay. Actually, let's go darker. Let's go darker. Oh, I was 19. I'm here for it. I was 19 and I went through a homeless stint, which I had a lot of those because I was always walking in faith. Apparently, that gets you homeless. But so I was homeless, and he called me one day. I was living with one of the members of the church, and he said, I had a dream, and God said that you're unfaithful, and he says you will never be anything without me. And he's just railing on, and I'm just like, holy crap! And I literally got off the phone and felt like I was worthless, that I had done something to offend this great man of God, and that I didn't deserve, anything. I contemplated killing myself at that moment. Not didn't, but contemplated it because I was like, oh no, I've angered the man of God. And it took me a few years to wrestle with that because I stayed in a relationship with this pastor for about 3 years up until a moment where we almost did get into a physical fight. Say that again?
It's based off of a dream that he had.
Yes, he had a dream. God spoke to him in a dream and told him that I was being unfaithful and that I was going to leave the church.
A dream that he claims he had, anyway.
Right. Well, and I later found out that this pastor liked to send people out to gather information to try to inform his prophecies. I remember one time we sat in a board meeting. We sat in a leadership staff meeting after a couple left the church, he asked us to, he says, gather all the bad information you can find out about them so that we can show people that God is no longer with them because they've left the church. And I would like to say that this type of behavior was abnormal, but it wasn't. At least not for the churches that I was involved in. And maybe that just makes me weird. But I saw this in so many pastors where there was this desire, because pastors can take on this tendency to personalize people leaving. And so anytime somebody leaves their church, it's like an attack on their ego and an attack on their anointing. And so a lot of them, if they're not healthy enough individuals, which quite a few are not, that becomes very damaging and it becomes a slippery slope. And I saw that church do a lot of damage to a lot of people. A lot of people. I know people who have not recovered from that particular institution to this day, and it's very unfortunate.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a lot.
Oh man,
I'm very invested in the story though. Oh man, yeah, dude, just these spiritual leaders are fucking vampires, like
yes,
all
sir.
along, and you know, and at the time you revere them as your spiritual leaders. What they're doing may look weird to you, but that's because you're not mature enough to understand that what they're doing is God's will. You know, so it's your problem.
Yes,
it's not them. They can do whatever they want, and if it doesn't make sense to you, it's because you're not close to God enough to understand. Jesus, it's just so predatory.
Oh yeah, it was pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
So where do you want to go from here with the story? Because I don't even know what kind of follow question to ask.
Well, I did start pastoring shortly after that. So I started pastoring around 22, 23. Yeah, I was young. Started pastoring shortly after that because I did want to do something different. And I associated with a lot of the larger churches to learn more from them. I went to a lot of leadership conferences, and I was in it. And then my church started to do fairly well. On a good day, we had maybe 500 on roll, and 300 showed up every now and then. But for the most part, that's not how it went. Fun times. But I was heavily invested in trying to be the best pastor that I could be. Now I have a lot of stories about that, but where my mind is going is specifically the lengths I went to try to make sure my church grew. And one of those, again, going to these church conferences. And there was some in Greenville that I'd go to with a guy named Ron Carpenter. His church is in California now, I believe. And then a guy in Ohio called R.A. Vernon. And so my wife and I would go to these things, and we'd pay tons of money to go to these conferences. And then at every single one of them, they do these big offerings. And the offerings were like, they want to encourage you to do, 1,000 or more. Some people were doing as high as $25,000. And little old poor me, because I'm convinced. And oh man, it was. Oh God, if I could really tell you some of the things that I've seen in some of the rooms I've been in, which some of that is in this, because now here, my church we were not a financially well-off church. Almost, I was on a mission to reach the unchurched, and so that also meant the unstable, the unemployed, the people are not going to school. So there's not a lot of strong economic interest there. We never had huge offerings. I didn't get to have a Cadillac or anything like that. I wanted it for sure, but never got that far, at least on that side, right? So I'd go to these conferences to try to figure out how to get my church big like yours. I want to be this guy too. And I'd literally give like $1,600, $1,800, $1,900 $2,500. I think the highest I gave was $3,600. And I mean, we were like struggling financially hard. But I was, I was convinced based off of what these people were saying that, the word was coming forth that God says, somebody today, you're going to sow that seed that you can't afford to say it. So, and that's literally the language. You're going to sow that seed that you can't afford to sow, and God is going to reward your faith, and this seed is going to be the one that is going to open up the doors of heaven. And then God is going to bring in people from the north, south, east, and the west and overwhelm you. And you get into this emotional fury, and it's like, baby, give me the wallet now. I've got to write a check. Now, and there was probably about there was about 1,200 of us in that room, and I would say about 800 of us participated. And I do know about $265,000 of it that got raised that night was one of those nights was actually bounced. And the only reason I know that because the pastor who's hosting the conference got up and announced it at the end of service. That several of you wrote bad checks, and I was just like, yikes. And I think the last conference of that one that I went into, the last conference of that one that I went to, and I had actually took my staff with me this time, and they were all actually disgusted by it. Because they did another one of those offerings, and my members are looking at me like, but we don't do stuff like this. And he's like, and they're looking at me like, do you want us to give into this? And I'm like, no, this is just something pastor got to do. I'm gonna do this. But then the pastor who's hosting the conference, he says, we raised, a little bit over $1 million. No, he said we raised 200 and something $1,000, and I just want you to know I'm gonna spend all that on my kids. And I was just like, what? He was like, yeah, that's just going to be shopping money. And I was just like, oh, so we just saying that. We're just going to just, this is disgusting.
What?
This is, yeah. And like, thank you for raising money for my shopping spree. And I was just, and I remember, other pastors in the room just being like, yay, glory to God. Yeah. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I just can't see that. I couldn't see Paul doing that. Now, and in this church's defense, they were heavily big into outreach and stuff, but at the same time, that was just unthinkable to me. And I know that one. Well, not that one, but another one. We ended up raising over 800,000 because I sat in the room with the duffel bags with that one. And so that was an interesting experience, just looking at God bless the man of God in that way. He bought a beautiful ranch with a bunch of 4-wheelers and stuff, and the pastors in his network, we would get to go to his house every now and then and enjoy the fruits of his labor that we paid for.
Dude,
oh man, it gets worse.
Oh, I'm sure. Ooh. I had a I was in the military for a while when I got out and I moved back home before I went to college. I got a security job, and one of the jobs was to just provide security for a conference, a church conference. And so I just stood outside the door, checked like tickets and all that, whatever, what a big deal. But what I watched was people like these speakers roll up in like Bentleys and shit. Lamborghinis. And I'm looking at this like, what? I'm in the wrong profession. What oh, damn. I'm excited about my McChicken I'm going to go get after my shift.
Yes.
I'm doing the wrong job here. But there was also like a tent that had like merchandise and stuff you can buy. It's the most expensive shit. Like you had perfume, robes, jewelry, like. And I'm like, if Jesus was here, wouldn't he be like throwing these tables around right
flipping this stuff over? Yes.
Isn't that how Jesus react? Jesus wouldn't walk around and be like, yeah, this is fine. This is normal. Like, y'all don't believe in this shit you're saying. Come on. Y'all are in it for the money. It's painfully obvious. Your Bentley has gold rims. Come on.
I think it was either Creflo Dollar.
Standing there.
Yeah, I think Creflo Dollar actually had a golden toilet. He had a golden toilet.
Did he?
Yeah, he had a toilet made of gold. Everybody was mad at the jet. I was trying to figure out about the toilet. Oh yes.
I remember him getting mad at people for not or for being upset because he asked for donations for a second private jet or something like that.
That's right. Yep.
That was a little while ago.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh man. Well, you know, I do have one more story. I have one more that I think because this one took place after I had made the decision that I was going to be an atheist. This was 2014. I was currently pastoring, and I was married to someone else at the time. My whole life was just in the worst place possible, and so I called my mentor and I said, "Hey, I'm done. I'm through with this marriage. I'm through with this church. I can't do any of this anymore. It doesn't feel integral to me. I don't feel like I'm being a person of integrity by getting up in this pulpit. I don't feel like I'm giving my kids a good example of what a healthy marriage is by staying in this." And at first he was very upset with me, and he was like, "You don't have a right to do it. God hasn't given you a right to divorce your wife." And I was like, "I'm gonna be really honest with you. God doesn't have to sleep with her or live with her, so I don't really care what his opinion is." And he was like, he was shocked. So I moved away for a while, and then I was gone for a few months, and then he reached out to me, and he said, "You know, I really don't want you to miss your purpose." And so he says, "I know you believe a little different, but I want you to still stay involved. You know, would you be willing to still work for churches and stuff?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, of course, I love people. You know, church is what I've done. You know, my whole life. I've been doing this since I was 10. So it's a major part of me, and I often describe those first few years as an atheist with a Christian heart. Well, while I did not believe in it anymore, I didn't necessarily see it as dangerous or anything yet. I just saw it as foolish, you know, to believe this. But I was like, no, the church still does nice things, so I can do that. I was working a pretty decent job in DC at the time. And he said, "Well, if you come back to Alabama, I want to put you on staff." And I was like, "Okay, we'll think about it. My only thing is I'm making 60,000 in DC. Can you at least make sure I have 40,000?" Because this was in Birmingham, Alabama. And he's like, "Yeah, that'll be no problem." His church at the time was like 8,000 members. So he's like, "Yeah, that won't be a problem at all." So I moved back down here, and I let him know, hey, I'm going through this custody battle with my ex-wife and stuff. So I have these other things going on, but I'll be here and stuff. And so we'll work it out. I worked there 2 months without getting paid at all. At the time, I think I had about maybe $5,000 to $6,000 in my bank account. I spent all of it on hotels and on a rental car the whole time. He had told me, he's like, "Yeah, as soon as you get here, we have a vehicle ready for you, and we're going to put you up in a nice space, so you don't have to worry about that." None of that ever happened. So I literally drained my money dry for 2 months, and then finally got a phone. It's common. It's common.
Yeah, it's so weird. We promise you the sun, the moon, and the stars, and then once you're locked in, they don't deliver what they promised. Yeah, nope. I've heard. It's never happened to me personally, but I've heard a lot of other people say similar things.
Well, once they did finally started paying me, I had drained my bank account dry in old Enterprise rental car, quite a bit of money. And they had put us in a little apartment that flooded out every night. So you had to make sure your stuff wasn't on the floor, or your stuff would be flooded. And I had to walk to the church Tuesday through Sunday to work at the church, because they never came through on the car. They did end up paying me $400 a week, and I do say $400 a week and not $10 an hour because they never paid me overtime. So once they did start paying me, they knocked me all the way down, and I was actually the only person on staff with a college degree. I actually revitalized their website while I was there, revamped their ministry. I literally created 2 new ministries during the time that I was there to help them make a transition into the local civic center for their Easter celebration and stuff. I actually pulled them out of a financial hole. That's how I would have said it back then because of my preaching. Like I got a call, say, hey, you got to preach tonight because Pastor such and such is at the beach. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh yeah, by the way, the church is in a hole. So, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so, and normally when I used to preach at that church as a guest, they'd always give me a fair honorarium. And it was like, oh yeah, and by the way, since you're a member here now, you don't get paid for that. So it was like, oh, okay, all right. So I'm struggling, but I preached and it was a beautiful message. That message is actually still on YouTube somewhere from all the way back then. The church went bananas, pulled them out of that financial hole, and I got nothing for it. And it's not even the financial stuff that was the worst part. Here's the kicker. It got to the point where there was like every day, if we're walking down the hall, he'd walk past me and he'd say, hey, you got to get better clothes or I'm gonna have to fire you. He'd come to me in the mornings and say, hey, if you don't get a car soon, I'm gonna have to fire you. We were sitting in a staff meeting one night and he says, listen, y'all, I got Darante and his family sleeping on the floor in an apartment because I want to make sure that his faith is where it needs to be before God elevates him. And that's when I went back to my apartment and spoke with the young lady who would become my wife and told her and said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do this. and at that moment, my mindset was, it was
okay.
Yeah, that's when people ask me like, hey, why aren't you a Christian anymore? I'm like, because I have a good memory. Like I remember all the bullshit I went through.
Fucking mystery. Who knows? You just wanted to sin.
Man.
That's why.
Yeah, of course. Like, because we all know that people who believe in God don't sin, you know? Thanks.
Wow.
Guess that's what all that forgiveness is for.
Perfect transition. What was what is it that led you away from believing in God at all? Is it leaving Christianity, like you kind of talked about a little bit earlier, is different from ceasing to believe in God? Like you can stop being a Christian and still believe in God, and sometimes that comes later. So what was that like intermittent period for you, and that led up to you just saying, you know what, I don't think there is a God.
Honestly, it was more of a sudden realization. I wouldn't say realization. It was more like an admission, right? Which is why I often explain it now as like I was a Christian on credit. I never actually believed that there was a God and that these things were happening. Not in a sense, I wanted it to be true. I did, and I hoped that it was true, but it was hard for me to believe that it was true. So that, you know, and I thought that was the difference between faith and belief at the time. So it was just like, no, I have faith that these things, but in reality, like, I don't know. Like, and I would have those conversations with myself, with God, you know. So 2012 came and Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin were shot dead. And it was the response of the church that really did it for me. It was like, okay, Black churches in my context were commercializing it, using it just to get attention, with no intention of doing anything to actually get to the root of the problems, look for any type of reform. And then I just started hearing all types of justifications of why it was okay to kill these people. And that was hard for me because I realized that, you know, I kind of got into this, even though it was about my mother originally. At the end of the day, I got into this to help people. And after everything I had seen, and then coming into that climate in 2012, I realized, like, damn, this religion that I'm a part of doesn't really help people. And, I mean, we do things that look helpful. And I was one of those people, like, I did gas giveaways, but you do a gas giveaway, they're going to need gas tomorrow. I did food giveaways. They're going to need food tomorrow. Those things only made my church look good. Those things didn't actually help to solve a problem. If anything, it helped to exasperate an issue. Because then you tell people that, oh, well, you should be grateful that somebody gave you this $10 in gas. And it's just like, oh crap, this is not anything that I want.
Yeah.
But so 2012, just after seeing the church's inability to actually be a force for social justice, or even be an articulate voice or a relevant voice in the face of social justice, kind of helped me realize that I had been sitting at the kids' table my whole life, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So it wasn't an angry moment. It wasn't a very mad moment. It was just like, hey, Darante, you tried long enough. You've given it the benefit of the doubt. There's nobody there, and you've made all your decisions based off of this, and it has really sucked for your life. You can stop now. And that was really it for me. It was like an admission that, come on, guy, who have you been talking to all of these years? You've been talking to yourself. Who's been in that prayer room with you? It was just you. It's okay to admit it. Nobody's gonna burn you at the stake, and that was it. And so I told my wife at that time that, hey, I don't think I believe this anymore. And then it became very apparent that we were not going to work. And she actually she actually went off the deep end. Like, it's terrifying. Like, I live in Alabama, and I don't know if you know how hard it is for a man, let alone a black man, to get custody of his kids in Alabama, or almost
Alabama, yeah.
But yes, and I was able to get custody of my kids. I was only able to get custody of my kids because the voices in my ex-wife's head had gotten so bad that the judge could no longer ignore it, without something seriously, bad happening. And even though I wanted to be happy, I was actually, again, disgusted. I'm like, because it shouldn't have taken this much, like, even going through court, I put on stand and asked, do you believe in Jesus in a custody battle? And it's like, are you freaking kidding me? It was like I said, man, I have stories for days when it comes to this. But my atheism journey, it was really just that moment of realizing it's okay to stop pretending, and you can engage life as an adult
now. I like that. I really do.
Yeah.
Like my moment was I've shared this story a few times before. I was driving, and I cried out to God. I was like, God, I need you in some way to show me that you're still here for me, because I'm starting to not believe you are anymore. And I don't want to believe that. I want to believe in you. I'm not asking for, I actually said this, I'm not asking for a huge miracle, because I know that's not how you work, but just you would know what I need in this moment to convince me you're still here for me. Whatever that is, I need. And as soon as I said that, and I was crying, like bawling when I was doing this. And as soon as I said that last line, I just was like, holy shit, I'm fine. It was like a light switch. I was like, wow, I'm never gonna pray again. That was stupid of me. I'm totally okay. I was totally relaxed. I was like, cool, I'm gonna go to work now. And I did. I went to work. Like it was the weirdest moment. Dark emotional transition in my life.
Wow.
And at some point you kind of give yourself permission to let go of, ironically, what the Bible also says, let go of childish things.
Yes, absolutely.
You kind of give yourself permission at some point to do that and be like, yeah, I don't I don't have an imaginary friend anymore. I'm done talking to my imaginary friend. You know,
I don't want to do this.
Fuck. How old was I? 30, 33, 34 at the time.
Oh man!
Like, you know what? I don't think I believe in my imaginary friend anymore.
No more drop dead Fred. It's done. It's done.
Man. So what's life been like for you since that moment? What have you been doing, and what have your like social your other relationships and social presence? What has happened with all that?
I've become extremely hyper productive. Some people say it's a good thing. Some people say it's a bad thing. I don't know. But at 28, once I did become an atheist, I realized I had wasted a lot of my life. And so I wanted to spend the rest of my life learning and doing and really testing out what I could do. Because there's a lot of things that I wanted to do and didn't do because I'm like, oh, Christians wouldn't like this. So I wanted to write a novel. So I did. I wrote one. Published it. I wrote, and so now, and that's literally what I do. My whole life now is like, hey, what do I want to do with my life? Why do I want to do it? And then let's just do it. So I've written books. I've learned how to program. I've created apps. My wife and I are actually building an app right now to help people critically think. I'm really interested in building community for non-believers. So I'm strategizing on things of that. I'm a project manager by day, and Pinky in the brain by night, doing the same thing I was doing yesterday, trying to take over the world. But literally, man, it's been the most liberating thing ever. I love this side because, like, the other side, I was always worried about: is this going to make God happy, or is this going to make the people of God happy? And it's like I have a more defined way to approach life, and it's simply: is this beneficial? Is this beneficial for me? Is this beneficial for my wife and my kids? Is it beneficial for other people that I'm working with? And that's literally how I live. And like, as long as it's beneficial, I'm almost down for anything. And I freaking love it. Godly, life isn't perfect, but I don't even believe in perfect anymore. Like, that's a mythology to me. What the hell is perfect? I now realize, like, expecting there to be no struggle in life is childish as hell. And I think that's how I live my life as a Christian, believing that struggle was always a sign of displeasing God or the devil, and that the only way you could be happy is to have a life without struggle. And now, as an atheist, I'm like, no, struggle doesn't make me less happy or less anything. It may frustrate me sometimes, but this is the challenge of life. We live on a floating rock out in the middle of nowhere. Like, get in the game. And so that's me now.
Yeah, like there was a hidden fee in the car I just rented. That's not the devil attacking me. That's not God tempting me. That's just fucking life.
Right.
Yes. That's just how shit works. We have this tendency to spiritualize everything. I think especially as apostles.
Yes.
But then once you step into the real world, you're just like, no, people are shitty. The world is shitty.
Man.
We have to deal with it simultaneously while trying to make it better. And that's all there is to it. There's no hidden meaning.
Man.
There's no hidden force. Using this moment to teach you a lesson that you're going to share with your kids in the future. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. So it's incredibly freeing to stop walking on eggshells in this only life that we have.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Absolutely.
Oh man. All right. So what else is there anything else you want to talk about? We don't have to end the stream here. I'm good for a little while longer if you're good. We can end the stream.
I'm good.
Here.
I'm good.
I'm just not sure where to go. I'm going to go from here with your story. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I do have one more. Well, oh my goodness, I have like two more horror stories. There's plenty of actually more horror stories, but just going in sequence because now we're at 2014, 2015. After I left there, I did take on another church position. Sadly enough, I took on two more church positions after this. But that had been my whole vacation, my whole vocation. And so, being a pastor, being in ministry for 18 years really didn't do much for my resume. So it was hard to navigate for a while. So I did take another
Imagine
job
that.
at a right. Took another job working for the Southern Baptist Convention, and it was
Oh
one of
no.
their local associations. It
Oh, I know you
ended
got
like a
something for that.
1960s horror show. It was horrible. I was only able to work with them for about 6 months. Well, may have been 8 months, but at the end, they had found out that my beliefs were a little different, and so I got
Mm.
abruptly fired.
Did you believe
Uh,
women can have rights? Is that what did it? Is that what caused
well,
them to?
actually, I think it was something as small as sharing something about Black Lives Matter, and oh yikes, because this was
Oh yeah, I
around
can
that
totally believe that. Easily believe that. No problem. You don't have to provide any
Oh man.
evidence. Yeah, that's absolutely what happened.
And I was actually the first Black person they had ever hired in any executive position for this regional spot. They did a big news wazoo about it and everything. But 8 months later, I was in a court case with them and was literally arrested, thrown in jail for a day and a half. I had to fight for like a year and a half. For a year and a half, I had to fight felony charges, only for the judge to dismiss everything at the end with an apology. But I was because after they fired me, I went home and I told
Better
my
been a
wife
really
what
fucking good
happened.
apology.
Man, right? It was not.
They better milk. They should have.
After
Whoever
they
milked
fired
that.
me,
Why? Okay.
I went
Yeah.
home and told my wife. I said, babe, I said it was the right thing happening the wrong way. I said I was starting to feel more and more uncomfortable working here anyway, and maybe I don't need to be working anywhere like this at all. We'll find something different. But that same day, the sheriff ended up showing up at my house to arrest me for harassment. And by the time I was getting ready to get out, like 5 other charges had been added. And I was apparently at that moment a danger to myself. So I was held overnight. It was a very trying time. We lost literally everything at that time. And this was the most eye-opening time period in my life. Because at this moment, I did start to tell people about my beliefs, because I had figured out that the person who was driving this kind of attack had had a conversation with someone, which was a preacher friend of mine, who had let them in on the fact that I was no longer a believer, which was apparently the motivation behind all of this hostility. And so, and I shared that with some family who had called to check on me. And I said, these people are doing this because I don't believe in Jesus anymore. And to not 99%, 100% of my family felt like what was happening to me was okay because I didn't believe in Jesus anymore. There were people who would not send donations for my family because they felt like they would be intervening with the will of God. And so my family, we had to pull ourselves from the brink of darkness. And those next 2 years were dark as hell, but we smiled all the way through them, because at that moment we didn't feel like we were being abandoned by God. You know, for the first time in my life, I was able to see things clearly, and it was just like, oh, these people are not healthy. These people are not well. These people that I've kind of called family, they're stuck. And if I'm not cool with their imaginary friend, they're okay with me being treated this way. And for me, I'm not cool with that type of family. That's not how I want my children to think family works. And I just don't think that's healthy moving forward. So it did hurt, like God damn, it hurt it, but it was just eye opening. And it was like, no, Durante, this is actually why your life has kind of been the way that it is. You've been living like you have things that you don't have. It wasn't just like I was living like I had a God who wasn't there. I was also living like I had parents who weren't being parents. I was living like I had a family who weren't being a family. So there were things I was taking for granted, such as not having a network, and so never really networking, not realizing like, hey, bro, you're out here on your own for real. You have an illusion of family, but you don't really have a support system. You don't have people that you can talk to about the things that are important to you, or anything like that. And so it was almost like being born again, being born a second time of my own choosing. And I hate to use a villain's line for it, but I often tell people you merely adapted to the dark. I was born in it, and so it's like life happens, man.
Yeah. It's Tuesday for us. What are you talking about?
Right?
Normal.
Oh. Oh yeah. So yeah, I have stories like these for days.
Oh, I imagine, man. Oh. So what do you? How do I word this? What do you want to do now? Like with your
Oh.
atheism, activism, what are your plans for the future? I guess that's what I'm going to ask. What would you like to see happen?
I would like to excuse me. I have a lot of ways that I look at this, and I am an ambitious person. So the same person I was in the church world, that still is me. And so when I was in the church world, I wanted to reach as many people as I could with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so now I'm on this side. I still want to do the same thing. I want to reach as many people as I can with, in this case, the good news of critical thinking, and that hey, this is actually a reliable way of living in life, and to actually adjust to what you're learning in real time and to adapt. And I man, and this may sound cheesy, and I don't care if it does. Like, I really want to contribute to something that creates safe space for people to deconvert, and not just deconvert, because then on the other side of that, I know for me, it was to explore what the hell I want to be now, if that's anything, and I think that's absolutely necessary, not just for the people who are going through it now, but for the people who are wanting to go through it. And the only reason they're not asking the hard questions is because there's really not enough safe spaces for them. And so the more safe spaces we create, whether it's online, in person, whatever it be, the more safe spaces we create, I hope we can get to a place where we have a higher percentage of people in the world who are separated from superstition. I think this has slowed us down. I think it's been detrimental to our progress. And I don't say that like a doomsday. I'm really pleased at what humanity's been able to achieve, but I really imagine, like, man, what if we would have fixed everything else when we started fixing our science? It's like science is the only thing science and math, we separated from superstition, but we kind of left superstition and everything else. But it's like, man, imagine how much more we know about history if we separated superstition from history. How much more would we actually understand about mythology if we separated superstition from religion? And, how many more medical and scientific breakthroughs could we actually make if we didn't have a large segment of our population fighting against science? That's what I'd like to see. But that's what I like to spend the rest of my life doing, is helping to contribute to a world where we have more critical thinkers and a lot less superstition.
You're right. That was a very cheesy answer. I regret asking you that question.
I love it.
No, man, that was perfect. That was great. Really. Hold on.
Oh, that's my wife.
Thank you, Jamie. Oh, that's your wife?
Yep, that is my wife. Yep. Our names look alike. That is my sweetheart.
Nice. Oops.
Jamie?
There we go. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The thing about creating a safe space for atheists is, as much as Christians hoop and holler about being persecuted, being canceled, and God's being taken out of this, and blah, 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 it's like, fucking try being an atheist for a day.
Yes.
Try being a fucking atheist, right? There's still places in this country you cannot run for public office if you identify as an atheist legally. It is illegal for you to run for office if you identify as an atheist. It's like, meanwhile, 99% of our government is run by Christians. Tell me how, please tell me how you're being persecuted.
Come on now. I've often said I was never persecuted until I became an atheist. I had never experienced persecution before in my life until I became an atheist. Then all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, there's persecution everywhere. And I might have been one of the people doing it. Boy.
That's crazy. Crazy thing. Like, I'm a straight white male. I'm decent looking. I have really nice hair. Yeah. So like the only place I lack privilege is in my atheism. That's the only like place I experience. Well, I can't imagine how much harder everyone has it. Like, don't worry about me. I'm good. I can deal with this one little thing over here, but everybody else has like something more. Like, y'all got people trying to take away your sexuality and shit. I don't know what that's like. That's gotta be. That's gotta suck. I'm sorry.
Right? Like, oh damn, that's not fun. It's not fun.
See anything in chat?
I was noticed Michael Beverly was in chat, and I did want to reach just holler at him because that is just one of my friends, and he and I are supposed to be doing something soon together, and so I'm really looking forward to that as well. And so it was just nice to see him in chat. And I didn't know you were in Mexico, Mike. Awesome, man.
Yeah. Oh god, he's gone.
Yep.
He hated me. Oh, he's back. He likes me. All right. You mentioned earlier you talked a little bit about mythology. I've seen you a couple of your videos you've started delving into sort of like older mythology. How has your leaving Christianity impacted your academic studies, I guess? Have you found yourself more interested in like some of these topics that you were otherwise forbidden from learning about?
Yeah. Well, see, in my development process, I was always reading French stuff anyway, right? So I was always very interested in who people like Baal were in the Bible and who people like Asherah were. And so I used to research them, but I just had nobody to talk to about it. So and then I couldn't figure out a way to put it in my sermons because my sermons were real feel-good sermons. And so, but once I became an atheist, which is funny because you would have think it would have been the Bible that led me there, but it wasn't. But once I became an atheist, it was like, oh, now it's going to be so much more fun to go back and learn about this and look at this. And so actually, my wife, she's been going through her deconversion process for the past year or so. And so she will just bring me the Bible and say, I was reading this, and can you believe it says this? Like, what the, and so we've actually enjoyed going back through and doing research. But a lot of this information is information I've had for years that I stumbled upon years ago, but just kept my suspension of disbelief in check. And said, no, this is not this. But now that I'm actually allowing myself to be more vocal, I'm just talking about all of it. And I feel that I appreciate the Bible as literature a lot more than I did as a Christian looking at it as some type of book of prophecy or something. It as turn of the century literature it's beautiful in the sense that it fits other books of that time frame. Now, if you want to take this as truth and try to live by this, then yikes. But other than that, as long as we can read it on the same, tone as the Odyssey, or any of the stories about the Egyptian pantheons, or any of the story about the Greek pantheons, then I am a-okay with this as literature. I'm not a book burner, not a book banner. I don't believe the book is a problem because I'm not superstitious. I don't believe books can be problems. I believe books become dangerous when minds are inhibited from thinking. And so it's better probably deal with the minds than the books. But I do now do a segment on my channel called Bible Study with an Ex-Pastor. And that's one of the things what we're doing. We're walking through and I'm sharing with people what I thought about it when I was preaching, what I thought about it when I was deconverting, and how I look at the text now. And it's actually been fun. We've gotten through Genesis chapter 1 through 3, and it's already been a hoot.
Oh man, there's so much in just those 3 chapters.
It really is.
Oh man.
Oh man.
It can't even. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about being an ex-evangelical atheist type is you can explore questions that you were forbidden from asking at one point.
Yes.
Yeah. You would literally have people tell you, don't read these books, don't listen to this author, they're all corrupt, whatever, they're lying, they're children of the devil, blah 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 blah.
Yep.
Whatever. Just listen to us. Just listen to us. And maybe a couple of people that will help us make money by selling you their programs or whatever and bullshit.
Yeah.
But once you become an atheist or deconvert or whatever, you kind of give yourself permission to ask those questions.
Oh yeah. There's no doors that you can't open anymore.
Yeah, it's like you, as a Christian, you only know like 10%, and once you become an atheist, there's like 90% more information available to you. And you can read all of it for free, or well, not free, but it's not going to cost you your soul. You can read a book about Asherah. You're not going to go to hell now. Wow, crazy.
You're not going to go to hell. Mm-mm. Nope. And I actually was told that if you ask too many questions, the devil will get in you. I literally had someone tell me that your inquisitive nature, the devil will want to use that. So be very careful. Someone told my mom he reads too many books. You need to stop him from doing that. It was very shocking things.
Wow. I went to I visited a church when I was in Bible college, mind you. I was die hard at this time. And someone tried to cast a demon out of me. Like, they did that whole like push their hand on your chest and like, come on, get out of this boy right now. Like that whole thing, man. And I'm in there like, what are you doing? Like, I'm in college to become a pastor. What demon are you trying to pull out? I was so confused. So I kind of I ignored him. He just moved on to he wanted me to fall down and be slain in the spirit. The guy next to me did that, and I didn't do that. So he went to the next guy, and the next guy did that.
Whoa!
And this was a guest evangelist at our church, and I was like, this guy doesn't know me. If he knew me, he would not be trying to cast a demon out of me. Right?
Oh man! Ooh.
What have you done now that you've never done in the past? It's a question for both of us, it sounds like.
Yes. I'll do a funny one first, and then I'll let you answer why I think about a real one. The funny one is I'll work on Sundays now. That's something I would have never done before. It was absolutely out of the question. And now I'll work any day of the week that I can.
We always kind of held to the view that that's part of the old law. It's not a thing anymore. You can work on Sunday now.
I think I just used it as an excuse not to have to work.
I think for me, it's a lot of music and movies.
Ooh.
That I didn't think I was allowed to watch, or that I would watch, but would feel really guilty for watching afterwards. You're like, my absolute favorite movie of all time is The Crow. I literally had a pastor, or my youth pastor, tell us that it's not a movie Christians should watch because it depicts this demonic imagery, this, and this.
Yeah.
And but it was my favorite movie. I was like, but I feel bad about that being my favorite movie now. Like, I didn't know it was a problem before, but now you just said that thing, and now I feel bad that I like that movie so much. So now it's like, I'm gonna watch whatever the fuck I want. I don't care who says, Same thing with music. It's similar sermons about music. Like, fuck off. I'm gonna listen to Depeche Mode or whatever I'm feeling. No one's gonna come and tell me. No one's gonna tell me I'm offending God by listening to this anymore. That's such a great feeling. I'm never worried. That a church elder is come to me and be like, "I saw what's in your CD player." That thought is never going to cross my mind again.
Right.
What a luxury.
Never again. Yeah, I think that, and that'll probably be my best way to answer that question. It's not actually what I do now that I didn't do before. It's what I don't feel bad about anymore. Like, so, I'd cuss before, but I'd feel god awful about it and just try not to do it again. I'd drink every now and then, and then I'd be like, oh, I don't want too many people knowing about this because it may damage their relationship with God. Now I could care less. Oh my God, I could care less. The ways that I could care less. That's probably the most liberating thing for me. That's the thing that I do now that I wouldn't done before, and that's just like not giving a flying F about how other people feel about things that have nothing to do with them. So no, if I'm gonna cuss, I'm gonna cuss. I'm not gonna feel bad about it. I drink about 2 beers, a night most days, and so I'm just like, hey, I'm living and loving.
Really? Mind your business. Like before would have been like, oh my God, you're so right. I shouldn't have. Oh, I'm going to go repent now. Now I'm just going to like, fuck off.
Yep.
My life. You can
absolutely
go somewhere.
Oh man.
Oh yeah. And I think that's such a big thing with religion is it takes control of every aspect of your life, and that's why we have a lot of like these Christian nationalist fucks who are trying to these like radical laws and everything because they want to control your life, and they realize that this like religious liberation gives you freedom and the confidence and attitude to say fuck off. I'm going to do what I want. You can't tell me I can't do this. Get bent. Like they don't want that. They don't want people to have that attitude. They want to force you. That's what they fear the most. Man. They're afraid of you telling them to go fuck themselves. That's what they don't. They're trying to stop you from saying that. So they're going to pass every law they possibly can.
Oh man, yes.
Live in your life the way you want. Anyway, rant over.
No, I love it. That is one of the things that kind of it ticked me off, especially about about the black church, is that there's a lot of black people who are impacted due to cannabis laws in these states, and it bothers me that more black churches aren't vocal about these, because at the end of the day, this is a religious law. That's the only way you can really make any type of sense. At the end of the day, there's no scientific data to make these things work the way that they do. Because certain people believe this is religiously immoral to do, they've now imposed this as immorality upon everybody. And so, like, that's been America's slippery slope since day damn one, legislating morality, trying to find a way to define what's right for other people. And And I hated that because I was that person at one time. You know, you couldn't be a part of my ministry. You couldn't be a part of my team at one time.
Yep.
If I couldn't legislate your morality, if I couldn't tell you that, hey, you can't sleep with her, or that's not the one, or God says don't do this, if I couldn't tell you that and you submit, then you're probably the devil or demonic or probably trying to do something crazy. And like I literally I apologized to a few of my staff members like a month ago, like my old staff members. And I said, I'm so sorry for like caring about shit that wasn't mine to care about. Like I was paying you to play the piano. Like it really didn't matter what you were drinking, who you were screwing, or any of that. I mean, as long as you wasn't, you know, messing with people in the church, messing up the harmony of things, like that really shouldn't have been my concern. And I'm sorry for the anguish that I created for a lot of you by making you feel like you had to live up to these standards that weren't necessarily standards you chose to live up to, you know, and that's such a weird thing to care about who somebody else is sleeping or sleeping with, or what somebody else is eating or drinking or smoking or anything else. And it's like, you know, again, I just felt like I got up from the kids' table because it's like these really seem to be the things that only kids would care about. I don't see how a functional adult would be concerned about things that are not functionally relevant, you know. But so I love it.
I used to do the Ray Comfort Way the Master street evangelism thing.
Yeah,
I'd do that on Saturdays. We had a whole group. I'd go out, like go to the mall, go to the strip mall, go to the beach, and walk up to random people and did that every Saturday for a couple of years, I think. And there are certain interactions that I had during that time that I still think about. I wish I could go back and be like, I am so sorry. I was fucking stupid at the time.
Yep.
I had no right to say that to you. I don't know you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Yeah.
You know, because I still feel bad about it today.
Yes.
Like I did some damage back in the day, and I don't feel good about it. You know.
Yeah. Somebody asked if I had lost any friends over this, and
good friend of mine.
Awesome. I'd say yes and no, and the reason I caveat that way is because my whole life in ministry, I wouldn't call the people that I had surrounded myself with friends. That's what I would have called them at that time, for sure. But the way I look at it now is like I lost illusions of friends. I lost illusions of functionality. Anybody who would no longer be able to be my friend because I don't want to play the video game you want to play, we're probably not compatible as friends anyway. And so just because I don't want to play in your imaginary playground, you know, But so no, I did lose people that I used to talk to, but I don't count it as a loss. Because that's just not who I wanted to be anymore anyway. And people do grow apart. That was something that I kind of already understood about life. And that if I was going to be willing to live drastically different and to kind of take this different approach, I was a-okay with them not being comfortable to come along for that ride. And then actually I've been more excited to get new friends because it's like, hey, you know, I actually want to talk about things that are important to me. And nobody in my old circles were interested in that. My old circles believed that Noah's Ark really happened and that dinosaurs was out there drowning with people at the same time. So I was kind of glad to get away from those conversations.
Yeah, it's like when you're hanging out with people in that frame of mind, you don't have to, or you have to put on a facade. You have to mask yourself in a way and pretend like you're this, even if you're like going out to the movies or going to Burger King or whatever, like you have to like keep this facade going at all times. And now it's not like we have the American Atheist Convention coming up here in about 4 weeks, which we go to every year. And I look forward to it every year because I live in a very red area. You know, there are no atheists around me. Everybody around me is voting for Trump. It's fucking kill me.
That's my neighborhood.
Just take my life, please. But this one time a year, I get to go to this place with just atheists, and we can talk about whatever
Yes,
the we want. We can be ourselves,
man.
our true, genuine selves, and not fear judgment from the other person. And it's just it's nothing like any time I've ever gone to church. You know?
Wow. Oh man, I'm still looking for. I can't wait to get to participate in the events. And I didn't know atheists did events for real. Outside of the stuff
Mhm.
like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, big stuff. I didn't know there was like Baja Con and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
snap, this is a whole new world. So I'm definitely trying to get a calendar of atheist events so I can take a look at what's happening.
There's a okay. Uh, are you familiar with Holy Kool-Aid? Thomas Westbrook.
Thomas Westbrook,
Um,
yes, yes.
yeah.
Oh yes, I've been watching
His
him for
website.
years.
Yeah. His actual website has a list of all the, not all of them, but a lot of the big atheist conventions and meetups that are happening. And I think
Really?
he keeps up to date pretty well. Yeah. So
So I'm gonna
definitely check it out.
type that in so I don't forget.
Or if you're in Alabama, right? So, yeah, probably. I was
I
gonna
am.
say you can look on Meetup, and every now and then you'll, if you're in a certain area, you might get lucky and find an atheist group. I have one in my area. It's like 6 very old people who meet at a Chinese restaurant every month. It
Oh wow.
it's something. It's there, but it's
It's
not
yeah,
that
yeah.
exciting.
Enough
Um,
said. Understood.
you, you probably wouldn't have even that in Alabama,
Right.
but
Oh no, no, I'm
uh,
afraid. I'm afraid.
oh man. All right. Um. Okay. We're about that time. I'm as fun as this is. I'm ready for bed, man. This has been fun. I think I'm tired from laughing.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Oh, dude. Yeah, you remember? I think I mentioned on Stacy's stream, Ryan Hartbonke. We talked a
Oh
little.
yes.
I was
Oh
I was
yes.
pretty drunk at the time, so I can't remember exactly what. Yeah,
Oh,
he's another person that was like Smith Wigglesworth that was highly praised by
oh
charismatic
yes.
Pentecostal denomination. Um,
Yes.
and they would play videos of him. He would go to like South Africa, and there would just be
Hmm.
like hordes of people that would come and see him preach. And there's all these stories that would come out of his meetings of like limbs growing back. Like
Yes.
there's a
Yes.
story of like there's these guys who had a dead friend and they carried his dead body and they couldn't get in, so they threw his body over the fence, and their
Yeah.
faith brought him back to life.
Look at
You know,
there.
like
My God.
crazy ass stories like that. But occasionally he would come to the U.S. and he couldn't do anything.
Any of
The
that.
reason he
That's
couldn't
right.
perform, yeah, all those he couldn't do any of those miracles we heard about because we don't have enough faith here in the U.S. like they do
We
over
weren't
there.
desperate enough. That's right. That's
Convenient,
right.
exactly.
Oh my. Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to look back on some of that shit and be like,
Yeah.
wow, what a bunch of shit we ate it up too, man.
Oh yes,
We
we
ate
did.
it up. We have,
Yes, we did.
you know,
I
we
I
didn't know any better
I, I
back
spent a
then.
lot of money going to those places.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I traveled halfway across the country to go to Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron's seminar so I could learn
Wow.
how to go up to people and be like, "Do you consider yourself a good person?"
I remember those clips, man. I was like, oh, this is incredibly uncomfortable. Mm.
So bad. Oh, okay,
Um,
so final thoughts. Anything you want to leave us with? Future plans, current worldview, advice for young
mm.
atheists. what you'd like to see happen in the Black atheist community, anything you want to leave us with. Floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you. I'll keep it simple and I'll keep it quick. And that is whatever it is that you need as an atheist in this community, whatever it is that you want as an atheist in this community, be a part of creating that. That's what's going to all get us there quicker. Instead of waiting for someone to create something that works well for all of us, which is kind of like how the church's strategy was, let's just all be a part of creating those things that we want to see in this space, you know, and see what happens. And man, let's just throw the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks.
I like it. That's the beautiful thing about atheism is like we have no idea what the fuck is going on. Just throw shit at the wall and see what. I'm not going to claim to know the answers. We're gonna figure this shit out together.
That's it. I don't feel the need to be anybody's savior. I don't feel the need to have all the answers. I don't feel the need to be the one in charge. Like so much of that I was able to let go of on this side. And that just feels incredible. And so it's just like now man, do the things that make sense, do the things that help out, do the things that contribute to the world that you want to see.
That's good. I like that. And that's a great place to end. Thank you guys in the chat for joining. Hope I wasn't ignoring y'all too much. I hope y'all enjoyed this conversation. I know I did. You can check all of Darante's links if you want to follow him on his other social media goings on the internet. Yeah, check those out. Follow, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Don't forget to like this stream because I'm really bad at saying that too. And yeah, stick around. We'll catch y'all next time. And yeah, I'm really bad at ending my show, so I usually just click the button awkwardly and I'll catch you backstage.
Awesome.
Good night, guys. I love y'all. See you later.
Hold on to your butts.